Welcome to Tai Chi, the way to radiant health. My name is Jeff Coté, and I am the Occidental Taoist. In this show, we're going to practice some Tai Chi and Qigong and other Taoist internal and meditative practices. These practices enjoy a long history throughout all of China, and I've had the great opportunity to study with some wonderful teachers, and I want to share that with you. Welcome. In this episode of Tai Chi, the way to radiant health, I'm going to share with you the counterswing series of Qigong. This is a very basic and fundamental Qigong. It's very good for activating the Qi, moving the blood, and preparing the body for Tai Chi practice. This practice should be done every week whenever you begin your practice of Tai Chi. This is an excellent beginner warm-up. So let's talk about some fundamentals that we need to engage with and understand before we even begin. First, the basic standing posture. We always want to stand with our feet roughly shoulder width apart and the feet relatively parallel to one another. Now, you don't want to be too forceful about that parallel because we don't want to put any strain on the knees. We want the body to be upright and relaxed, and we want the center line to be aligned and relaxed so that our weight drops down into our pelvis. There are three primary centers of operation in the body that we're going to learn to become very aware of. This Qigong is very good at teaching us about their relationships and how to manage them. First is called the lower dantian, and this is located a couple of inches below the umbilicus, below the navel, in the very center of the body. So if I drew plane lines between all the three planes of my body, where they met in the very center of the body would be that location. This, as I said, this is called the lower dantian. Now, as you can see, this center can operate on its own. It can turn left and right, it can move forward and back, and while it affects the rest of the body, it is its own operating center. The second one we want to talk about is located in the center of the chest. This is called the middle dantian, and it also operates individually, but also in relationship to the lower dantian and the final upper dantian, which is located in the center of the head. Now, the three of these need to fall on that plumb line of the center line. We want to be able to align them and direct their weight and balance into the bowl shape of the pelvis. If you were to examine the pelvis, you would see it's shaped sort of like a bowl. We want to make sure that the pelvis is tilted in such a way that it's supportive rather than deflective to the body weight. If we arch the low back and have too much lordosis, the weight will drop down and we'll be actually supporting our upper body weight with our low back muscles and a quadratus lumborum and the erector spinae. And that's not beneficial for the low back, nor is it beneficial for the activities we're going to be engaged in. Once we have that basic alignment, we want to make sure we unlock the knees and the hips. So we softly bend in the knee and in the ball and socket joints of the hips so that we have a buoyancy in our lower body. This buoyancy enables an adaptive change. We should be free and relaxed. The shoulders should be relaxed and held on top of the rib cage in a relaxed posture, just dropping them straight down. If you find your hands in front because of tension in the shoulders, roll the shoulders up and back and drop the arms down the sides. That enables you to get a good relaxed posture. Now, in a natural relaxed posture, your hands should fall along the sides of your body. If they're in front, roll them back. You may need to do that a few times to help open up the chest and release the shoulder tension. We want to get a feeling of suspension of the head and neck. So imagine as if there's a string attached at the very top of your head. Let your chin ever so slightly tuck down to open up the back of the neck and align the head on top of the center of the chest. We've now got a great center line, relaxed lower body structure, and our body is prepared for our activity. When we breathe, we should breathe from our lower abdomen. We want to breathe to and from that lower dantian as much as possible. Our breath should move in and out through the nose, and it should be relaxed and free and consistent and rhythmic. Over time, as you work with Qigong and Tai Chi, you will discover that the breath regulation is an important part of both Tai Chi and Qigong. And coordinating the breath with the body movement is an important element to the well-being and the maintenance of the body. Last is, where is our mind going to be? In these first exercises, we're going to give very close attention to the 3 dantians and their basic operation. As we go along today in this practice, we're going to discuss some other elements that we're going to bring into our awareness and try to give our attention to while we're practicing. But I want to get started with the basic movement first, because we build on that basic understanding as we go. So we take our weight, make sure it's in the center of the foot, the body is aligned, and we're ready to begin. We start with the hands in front of the lower abdomen. We sink into the legs a little bit, so we drop down. And our first movement is going to be an expansion outward, trying to push through the legs, through the arms, and through the body at the same time. So everything arrives together. Then when we drop, we release. And notice how when I drop, I catch in my legs. I let my legs act like springs and I bounce a little. That buoyancy is very important. It creates a relaxed posture, and it allows your legs to absorb instead of harden. We're trying to create a free flow of qi and blood here. We're trying to increase the activity in the tissue without creating hardness and contraction. So we allow ourselves to suspend, lifting and dropping. And we're going to do that repeatedly. First we start slow, just a lift and drop and catch, and just catch that bounce. But then we want to make it consistent and rhythmic. So we get this bouncing swing. Now as you can see here, all the major joints of my body are moving. Nothing is still. The shoulders are moving. Even the elbows are getting ever so slight bend. The knees and the hips, even my spine is getting a slight bouncing contraction and expansion as I lift through the head and drop. Just creating space. Now, after a few repetitions of this, we're going to move on to what's called counter swing. Now, the counter swing action is the same basic action here. The only difference is we're going to have one arm go in front of the body and one arm go behind the body as we drop. Now, a couple of important elements. We want to anchor the hips so that the hips don't turn and thereby twist and torque the knee. Instead, when we anchor the hips, we get a rotation from the middle to lower dantian. So our whole mid-torso begins to get a twist one direction, and then when we come back, the other direction. So again, we still get that lift and the drop, the lift and the drop. And I want you to experience that. Take it one piece at a time. Lift and drop, and lift and drop. Now, I'm pausing in between, and in the full expression of this practice, there's no pause. We just lift and drop and twist. Lift and drop and twist. Now, a general practice of this, we're going to do a number of repetitions. Usually when I start beginners in practice, I usually have them do 25 to each direction. So pick 1, 1, 2, 2, and so on. Okay? For now, since we're just in a learning phase, we're not in the practice phase yet, we're going to actually move on to the next transition. Now, the transitions in these particular exercises are as important as the actual movements themselves. Okay, as we transition from one movement to the next. One of the elements of Tai Chi that's vitally important and is one of the hallmarks of really high-level Tai Chi is smooth flow. The ability to transition from one move to the next and have it seem like a seamless flow of movement, where there's no clear demarcation of the end of one and the beginning of the other, because they just transition freely. Okay? In order to do that, we have to learn how to follow a movement and its momentum and pick the right movement to induce change. This is an important element of Taoist thought anyways, since Taoism is about the study of change to a large degree. What we're trying to learn to do is feel where the optimum moment of efficiency is in our actions. What does that mean? Well, if I try to create a change too early, my whole body locks up and tries to force a change into action. So if I'm counter swinging and I try to switch to a different move too early, you can see my body kind of fight that momentum. But if you analyze any movement, you'll find that there's a natural ebb and flow, a place where the power starts to decline and then reverse. For example, here I reach an apex point and it's about to reverse back to the other. That is a perfect place to create change. Another one would be with the arms up here, which we do to create the counter swing. We reach this apex point and then drop it down, turning the upper torso, right? To make this next change, we want to switch from a counter swing action to a forward and back swing action. So we pick the apex point of one of the turns and we direct the rotation to change from the power of our waist, directing the arms out. One of the things we're shooting for is minimal contraction of muscle tissue. This is very different from Western styles of exercise. This is a synergistic exercise. We're trying to get our whole body to coordinate and work together rather than isolate individual muscles and have them work in isolation. That is very good for developing contractive power in individual exercise, but it's not so good for coordinated power of activity. Tai Chi is all about coordinated power. So we get that counter swing action happening, and we pick that transition moment right at the end of the swing, and we redirect to forward and back swing. Now here you can see I'm still powering the movement of the arms more from the lower body than from the shoulders. I'm not trying to lift with my shoulders here. I'm trying to use the momentum that I've generated to just keep that in action. And I'm trying to motivate that from the center's relationship to the ground, pressing through the ground, like so. Now, here, we're working with just the swinging of the shoulders and the bouncing of the legs. And your job as a practitioner here is to integrate them so that it feels like the center is again pushing and expanding outward at the same time, just as we did here. So I'm expanding forward at the same time that I'm expanding through my legs. You're going to find this expansion practice to be central to a lot of what we do in Tai Chi and Qigong. Now this is a great opportunity to pay particular attention to your shoulders. A lot of time if you're carrying shoulders in here, shoulder tension in here, you're going to find yourself lifting that shoulder blade and pulling it forward, and that's going to tighten everything up, constricting the breath, constricting the flow of the movement. Instead, try to allow the weight of the arm to pull the shoulder joint open. Relax it. Let the swing down help to relax and pull those shoulders down, almost like you're throwing it down a little bit, letting it go. In fact, there's a variant of this Qigong, which is used oftentimes in medical Qigong in China for reducing hypertension. And that's, they literally throw the arms down, lift up and drop. We'll be talking about some of those medical Qigongs later along in the series. But understanding where these basic moves come from, oftentimes the basic wellness moves, is very helpful to a deeper understanding of correction. Now, I want to talk about grounding here for a second. Grounding is a condition where we actually are neutralizing forces, okay? To end this movement, we want to ground it into the ground. We want to kind of release that. We don't want to lock the body up again. A lot of times when people stop something, they try to stop abruptly. And again, that's a lot of force and tension on the body. If you get a lot of momentum going or a lot of strength happening and you try to stop, you're more likely to injure yourself. Instead, we want to train ourselves to let go. So we'll redirect that force towards our center line and then just drop it. And let your body come to a natural, relaxed stop. This teaches you not to stop your body with tension, but through simply stopping the activities and letting the natural energy and the momentum you create flow out and have its impact. Okay. Those are two basic or 3 basic practices that we use at the beginning of the counterswing. There's another one that's a little bit more complex, but I don't want to talk about that one until we get into a little bit more complexity even in these basic practices. First, let's talk briefly about the basic mind state we want to be in. There are some functional principles of mind and body that we want to start to incorporate. I wanted to get you going first with some activity, get you moving, because that gets you active and activates the chi. Now let you feel your body as I talk about these perspectives. First, we want to be calm and relaxed. Calm is the mental condition, relaxed is the physical one. They feed each other. These are states that we want to become very familiar with and learn to manage and balance. You can use physical relaxation to help your mind achieve a state of calm. You can use a calm mind state to help your body relax. They're co-creative. And you're going to find all these things I'm about to talk to you about are like that. They're all co-creative, and they each help each other in addition to their individual co-creation. So we have calm and relaxed. The next one we want to talk about is centered and grounded. What does that mean? You hear people talk about that a lot. What is centered? What is grounded? They're abstractions for most people. But what I want you to do, since this is a body art, is to take it and make it a very physical, real thing. You have a physical center of gravity, and we want to learn to operate from that physical center of gravity. In Tai Chi, when we say, are you centered, we're literally referring to the idea of, are you moving and operating your body from its center of mass? Now, there's a basic principle here that is very useful and we want to keep in mind, is that any object that has mass and occupies space is most easily and most completely controlled by its center of gravity. That includes us. We have mass, we occupy space. We are going to move most efficiently and most effectively when we move from here, this lower dantian. If I want to move in that direction, I want to move the center of mass. If I move somewhere away from the center of mass first, I'm no longer going to be balanced, and I'm no longer going to be as effective and efficient, because my body's not going to be working together as much. There'll actually be conflict internally. So become familiar with the space. Now, a lot of times people have trouble finding that space, and that's okay. It can be trained. What I want you to do is place your hands so your thumb is like on your umbilicus and your palm is just below that. Then your backhand you will place on the low back, opposite, so you can feel the front and back. Now you have a frame of reference for your feeling awareness to pay attention to. And we're going to turn that feeling awareness inward. We want to try to feel not just the hands, but what's between them, the space that's between them, and find the midpoint. Sometimes some people have trouble with the left and right. You can place your hands on either side and start to feel the midpoint between them. Maybe going back and forth between those just to help yourself identify where that center point is. Once you have a sense of centered, it's much easier to become grounded. What is grounded? Well, on various levels of being, it's talking about being in the space you're in. It's being present. But on a physical level, how are you relating to the ground? What level of tension are you using from one leg to the other? Are you pressing harder with one? Does that force you over to the side? How does that disturb your center and your balance? Right? Does it affect your calm and relaxed? We want to be calm and relaxed evenly, right? We want the body to be evenly relaxed. If I'm tense on one side and relaxed on the other, that's creating an imbalance, right? And it will again pull us away from our centered condition. So we pay attention to our relationship to the ground. Now, from the hips and the waist all the way to the ground, there's a lot of activities we can engage in to change our relationship to the ground. There's rotation in the legs. We could be focusing on rotating the knees in and out, using the power of the hips. We could be pressing. We could be collapsing inward or pushing outward. We could be leaning forward and leaning back. We want to play around with all of those until everything feels equalized. And then most important, we have a connected relationship to the ground. Most people, when they stand and when they walk, press away from the ground too hard. There's a sense of pushing and holding. We don't want to hold ourselves away from the ground. Instead, we want the legs, as I mentioned earlier, to be like springs, where we sink into them and have a soft and stable relationship with the ground. Now, from the hips down through the legs, we have these bones that should be supporting our weight. Most of the time, people think of muscles as being what supports your weight, but that's not true. Muscles are designed to move bones. Bones are designed to hold weight. We should put our weight on our bones and then use the muscles to hold them in place. It doesn't have to be rigid. In fact, we want the muscles to hold the bones softly with just enough force to hold them in place and no extra. Anything extra is wasted energy and takes us out of the relaxed position, right? If I'm holding firmly, too firmly, I begin to tighten. That doesn't conform to calm and relaxed. So we've got calm, relaxed, centered, and grounded. And when we're centered and grounded, we'll find it easier to be calm and relaxed. Next, we want to talk about whole and total, or whole and complete. What do I mean by this? How many times in our day are we aware of our whole body? The space between the fingers, behind the neck, behind the knee, the bottom of the feet, underneath the arms. There's a lot of spaces that we don't give attention to. Oftentimes when we're engaged in trying to accomplish an activity, we get very focused on the activity that we're engaged in and the accomplishment, and not necessarily how we're using our body to do that. Tai Chi is the opposite of this. We want to become immensely aware of all the nuances of what our body can do and how to integrate them together to accomplish it more effectively, so that we can remain in the calm, relaxed, and centered and grounded state. So we take our awareness and we try to feel from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet and everything in between, from the front of the body to the back of the body and everything in between, from the left side to the right side and everything in between, and from the center outward in all directions. This is going to become particularly important as we get into more complex movements of Tai Chi, where we have to learn to integrate complex actions into one thing. If you think in terms of a sphere, everything is always integrated. Spheres are not separate. There's no part of a sphere that's separate from any other part. So when we move, we want to learn to think and feel our personal spherical space that we occupy, and become aware of it and feel from our center out into that space. Right? We have exercises that are part of that. And in fact, this expanding bounce helps us to get that. We can sort of imagine a sphere expanding and returning, and expanding and returning as we work with that. Okay. Next, the last one of these is alive and lively. When we're practicing, we want our whole body to be activated and alive, but not tense. This would be alive and lively. This would be a little too much alive and not enough lively because it's stiff. This would be relaxed, but not alive enough. It's flaccid. It's like a floppy fish. We want it to be alive and active. Now take that, what I just did with my hand, and extrapolate that to your whole body. So your whole body feels like it's actively reaching outward in every direction. I'm feeling the space between my fingers with the skin on the inside. I'm feeling the space behind my neck with the skin of the neck. It's like I'm trying to feel the air all around me, but stay relaxed, not trying to force. Right? This will take some practice. What's going to happen is as you start to activate yourself, activate your body, you're going to find places that are tighter than other places. And that's part of the practice, is just feeling the whole body, feeling where that excess activity is, and draining it away. Maybe letting some of that excess energy go to places where it feels like it's harder to activate. For example, if somebody has a lot of tension in the hip, they may find it hard to open the legs and activate it. One leg will tend to collapse a little bit. You'll feel like you can't feel in here. So if that's so, take some of the excess energy and activity you have elsewhere and try to direct it with your mind and your intention into those spaces, almost as if you could move it around with your intent and your breath, because you can. That is what's working with the qi. Now that we've got these basic principles, calm and relaxed, centered and grounded, whole and complete, and alive and lively, as a basic understanding of how we should do this, let's go through those activities we just did again. So now we're going to begin our full practice, starting from the beginning and going through the entire sequence. We'll do 25 repetitions of each. Take a nice slow pace, relax your breathing, take the opportunity to sink your awareness inward. We begin with expanding bounce. And we transition to the counter swing. And the forward and back swing. Notice if that felt different from the first time. Were you operating from your center? Analyze what you just did from the perspective of those basic principles. Did you operate from your center? How was your relationship to the ground? Were you able to remain calm and relaxed? Was there a sense of whole and totalness or whole and completeness, right? Was everything alive and lively? You can see why a number of repetitions can be helpful, because it takes time to sink into each one of those experiences and ask yourself, am I whole and total here? Having a few repetitions, you examine that. Am I operating from my center? Can I shift more? Can I feel my center more? Can I feel from my center more? These are all questions that you're going to ask yourself. Shusha, thank you for joining me on the path to radiant health, long life, and a peaceful, happy heart.